Well, good morning, good afternoon, whatever time zone you find yourself in, what weather conditions you find yourself, and this being a half British podcast, the weather will no doubt enter at some point. Welcome back to the Family EV podcast. I am John, and as ever, here is Joe from EV Motoring. How are you, Joe?
I'm doing pretty well. It's 55 degrees here in the middle of February in Chicago, so I cannot complain. How about you?
Wow, it's actually lower than 55 here right now. We've had a couple of. This morning was cold. I mean, there's no snow. This is still Northern California. This is still the Bay Area. But I went outside this morning. Little glitch in the ID4. I know, huge surprise. If I want to preheat the car, if the car's been, I don't know if you found this with yours. If the car was off for any period of time, like just off, it doesn't respond to the app.
Yep.
So I have to go outside, blip the remote, and come back inside and send the command to it to thing. This morning it was 32. It was freezing, and I'm old, and I used to have. Well, I still technically have asthma, and yeah, there's quite the coughing fit, which got me out of emptying the dishwasher. So that's a weird.
So you have a software background. You might know more than me on this one. I've actually always wondered that. Now that I've owned the Volkswagen and the Polestar, which had a similar experience with the app, that you'd open the app and it's spinning and thinking. You might tell it to do something and it maybe doesn't do it the first time. That you have to ask it a couple more times for it to eventually preheat the cabin or whatever. And for whatever reason, the Tesla app, when you open it, it just is always 90-some% of the time excellent. And I don't know what's the is there some sort of logistical difference in the communications that makes the Tesla app update a little better?
I think the difference is that Tesla has a low power mode, incredibly low power mode, which isn't that low. I mean, what is it like? Have you worked out the vampire drain on your car yet overnight?
I haven't paid attention to what it is with Sentry off, which is actually what I have at home. But with Sentry on, it certainly sucks down the battery relatively quickly.
So the issue here is energy conservation. Volkswagen goes to sleep, as in after a period of time, it goes to sleep. Now you can pre-program it and precondition it. I understand that there is some software glitches in that. Apparently, there's software glitches that are different in the all-wheel drive to the rear-wheel drive, according to my dealer friend. But yeah, the car goes to sleep. Now the Audi, the e-tron, interestingly enough, you can talk to the Audi, you can check the battery, you can change the battery numbers, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100%. You can tell it to charge, not charge. However, if you do it a certain number of times, it will send you a message saying that you will, at some point, hurt the 12-volt battery. Because the car is essentially running on the 12-volt battery while you're doing this. So I think that Tesla has a better setup in terms of the inverter between the connection, the DC to the DC to DC conversion between the 12-volt and the big ass battery.
So I actually have a story about
that.
Why a quick tangent. I managed to run out with my Tesla. I was a mile from a supercharger, and so I limped it into a parking lot. Car completely shut down in that parking lot. Next day, I know I didn't tell you about this. This was only a few days ago. Figured this would be a perfect time to talk about it. So I left the car and went back the next day. My dad came with. Took his minivan and hooked up the Tesla, towed it around, a bunch of circles in the parking lot, which gave it, after about a mile of driving in circles, we got 3 miles of range on the computer, allegedly, and I was able to limp down the road to the supercharger. But interestingly, I had to pop open the tow hook, jump that to get the hood to open, to then get to the 12-volt, which is a lithium battery, and I had to put jumper cables on that, which I did not want to do because you're never really supposed to jumpstart lithium, but or not with the the jump starter I own, and that's what allowed me to unlock the car with the credit card. But the car would not respond to the credit card until I did that process. So it went into some sort of really deep sleep, because there's no way, I do not think the 12-volt was dead. I think it just went into some sort of preservation mode, shutting down, and that was the way to essentially wake it back up.
there is a right way to, if you're running low on battery, you're meant to do something to the Tesla, and I can't. There's a YouTube video on it. I've seen it a few different people have done it. Yeah, if you're running out of juice, like critically low on juice, you're meant to do something to your car in advance so that you can still get in on it. I just want to apologize to our listener. If you're looking, especially if you're the video listener, and you keep seeing me looking away, it's because I started a new job yesterday. And I can't tell you who it's for. It's a contract thing I'm doing, and I have a requirement to be online, and it's monitored. I'm going to be honest with you. This is the first time this has happened to me in my entire career. But they're giving me enough money where I can pretend to.
So in the next video, there'll be a robotic arm moving a mouse in circles, right?
So you know what, Joe? You're a good man, because you reminded me that earlier on today I had to get my Apple mouse to work with this non-Apple device, and so we'll just I'll just have this down here and just be gently doing things. It is a ridiculous world. How did we get into this? I had a running order, my friend, and we've just blown it apart. How did we? I don't even know how we got to this. All right, ladies and gentlemen, here's the running order for today. We're going to talk about the news. We're going to talk about Joe's been to the Chicago auto show. We'll start off with, well, actually, you know what? They're going to bring these all things together. So I'm going to kind of make it a hodgepodge. What else would you expect? So in the news, and I don't think it was linked to a press release, but it's just kind of interesting because we've touched on it before. The current administration of the US government has asked Tesla to expand access to non-Tesla EVs to the supercharger network. This in the same week when there was a report out that said that the US, the reliability of US infrastructure as pertains to non-Tesla superchargers is a bit crooky, for want of a phrase, and I would agree with that. Joe, now that you've left the CCS world, remember the pain that we have to go through. And so this is what has happened to me, and this is the ups and downs of the past, what day is today? Today's Tuesday, right?
Valentine's Day.
I love you too, sweetheart. I love you too. So on Saturday, quick heart story. The little puppy that you saw last week sadly didn't make it. We did everything we could for him, and it's horrible. It was heart-wrenching because we were just starting to see his personality come out, and he was an absolute love, but unfortunately he didn't make it. And so on Saturday, what started off as going to the farmer's market and then taking him to the vet, then turned into a driving to pick up a dog in Kettleman. And that's not an issue in the Audi. But unfortunately, because of the rain we've had, a key road between, I don't know, Soledad, I guess. I got to find a map. I just realized I'm using, because I can't use that mouse because it's connected to a laptop that I'm pretending to use. And I can't use the keyboard either because that's connected to it as well. This is hilarious. I've got more screens right now than is normal or normally needed. Let me go to 101. Salinas, Pinnacles. So Bitterwater, that's Highway 25. Oh, 198. So 198 between Peachtree Ranch and Coalinga was shut because of flooding. Which meant I needed an extra 45 miles of juice in the e-tron. Now, here's the thing, Joe. My wife still doesn't understand how quickly her car charges. Like, has no idea. So we pulled into. Let me go into the. Let me do this because this will be. I want to make sure I use the data as opposed to how my wife feels, which is two completely different. You remember how your wife feels, Joe? Remember when you were married? Remember the happiness, the difference between reality and how they feel, Joe? Remember? Do you miss that feeling, Joe? Here we are on Valentine's Day. Is that a feeling that you
I'm looking
miss?
forward to a vacation next week of me, myself, and I.
Joe's being diplomatic. So we didn't start because we were just doing errands and going down to the vets and weren't doing anything else. We didn't need a full charge. 80% would be more than fine to go down to. It's like on the south side of Santa. It's like halfway. It's past Santa Cruz. It's near Salinas. But now we have to go to Kettleman, and it's raining. Wow, it was. We had some real. So it was raining hard enough to wash out a road. So that kind of tells you how much rain there was. I said to my wife, we need to charge for 10 minutes we need to charge for about 15 minutes, and we did. We charged for 17 minutes. I think it's going to tell me. Yeah, 17 minutes. Get this, Joe. 17 minutes went from 25 to 73%. That's nuts on this car. It was pushing 140 and it was tapping out at like 150, 154, 155. And 41.5 kilowatts. And my wife is like, she was fine with this charge. This one she understood we needed. And this would get us into Kettleman with about 10%. And then as soon as we leave, Waze says, no, you got to go south to Paso. And we're like, fuck. Now, what was awesome is, and I've never had any problems charging at Soledad, but they have and these were relatively new because they've been installed. They were installed just when I did my first range test of the ID4, which was actually after I'd driven it all the way to New York and back. So they've only been in the ground for 18 months. They just pulled them out and put in the brand new units, the brand new Electrify America. I got to say, I'm a huge fan of the charging of the cable. It's longer and lighter.
But
I know that's not something everybody likes, but
I saw your short that you posted about that. So they still have the Chatamo unit there. Is that so? What's the amount of coverage? Like, so in California, I know there's a different rule. Like the Chatamo units still have to be kept up for a certain amount of time.
Yep. Yeah. In fact, so that wasn't that site. I didn't do a video at Soledad. I don't think I did a video at Soledad because it was pissing down. I was in the car, but I got to Paso Robles,
okay,
which I've done multiple videos. So we're heading south. And I'm just cutting it, and the rain and the wind, it was just bad. And I'm like cutting it too close for comfort. And there is nothing between Shandon and Kettleman. I mean, you're in the middle of California country. You're right in the hills and the valleys between the coast and the Central Valley. So I said to my wife, I said, I'll run in. We'll stop at Paso. I'm going to do a pit stop at Paso. You have to understand, Joe, the very words pit stop at Paso fill me with dread because that site has been a cluster. I mean, it's 75% cluster. Even if it's working, it's been in restricted mode, 34 kilowatt cap out, one thing and another, multiple reboots, multiple restarts. I did a comedy gig. I featured a headline down there, but I don't know, early in the year. And the whole thing was based on me driving down there and getting down there early and charging up so that I could leave and get home once I'd done the gig. I didn't want to be finishing a gig at 11 o'clock at night, then charging for an hour on a cold battery, and then driving. It was a pain in the ass. And I shot a video about it at the time. Well, they have replaced the three, I'm going to call them the core chargers. So the straight regular CCS 150, and it was working. Oh my God. I mean, I'm like, wow, what a difference. The other one, yeah, you're right. They hadn't changed it, and it's still one of the older. I think this is it's an ABB. It's not a Signet. So I'm not sure what it is, but it's not a Signet unit. And that was, so we charged up there, and again, this was, I said to my wife, my wife didn't believe me. So she got out of the car and walked with the kid up to this little food market, like fancy food market. I'm not talking 7-Eleven here. I mean, gourmet cookies, gourmet coffee, pizzas, amazing place. And I've got an excuse to go back down there. I plugged in for 6 minutes and 26 seconds. And it went from 32 to 51, delivering 15.5 kilowatts. My wife didn't realize when I said we'll only be here 5 minutes, I meant we'll only be here 5 minutes. And then we drove up to Kettleman. Now, Joe, we've talked about Kettleman in the past, and I'd hoped that EA would do an announcement when they were going to open it and maybe include us on it. And if you've been watching, what are the boys from San Francisco called that rent out the Teslas? The Kilowatt Brothers? Or
yeah, Kilowatts, yeah.
The Kilowatts, yeah. Right? They got in trouble recently for hacking the screen.
Oh, yeah. Do you know whatever happened with that? I mean, I saw him put the Tesla homepage as the screen.
Yeah, what had happened is somebody had, because these have got a Windows CE terminal in them, and somebody had left open the Team Viewer session. They just use Team Viewer to remote into these things. And somebody had left the Team Viewer session running but not connected. And so he just, because it's a touchscreen, he just opened the browser and put, which is not hacking. Trust me, I know how to hack. That's, yeah.
It's amusing.
That was just shit posting, essentially. Anyway, the whole of Kettleman, according to the app, was down. And so here's the public service piece. I'm just seeing if it's on right now, actually. Give me 2 seconds. Santanella. No, that's Harris Ranch. Which was,
so, I don't need to jinx myself since I don't have CCS trips planned for the next year. But I had not had issues getting somewhere on CCS. I've always been able to at least get lucky enough that there's at least one handle of one plug running.
I was this. We'll get to there this morning. We'll get to this morning in a few seconds. So right now, you see this. So this is Kettleman, which you will see says is unavailable.
How many chargers is that? I couldn't see on the screen.
10 chargers. Kettleman is crucial. It's crucial. So it's 50 miles. So it is 100 miles between Harris Ranch and Lost Hills. Okay. And Kettleman, right in the middle. Kettleman is where there are 2 superchargers. There's the OG down by, up. They took over an old diner and they turned the parking lot into, and this is the one that had a Tesla lounge. It was the first Tesla lounge location. And then, because it's the I-5, and this is just, it's Tesla world, they're building another 100 down by the In-N-Out in old empty land. And it's one of the original 250 feature sites, like it was one of the first all V3, V3 from the ground up infrastructure. And Kettleman is just so important because it's between, you only have 4 chargers in Lost Hills and 4 chargers in Harris Ranch. So even if you got there, I mean, we've been to Harris Ranch twice now, and we've had to wait, and this was wait last year before we had the big uptake in CCS sales. But if you go to PlugShare, what was interesting. And here's the public service announcement, just going into Kettleman right now. If you go into PlugShare, and look at the check-ins, you'll actually see positive check-ins. And this is why it's so important that you, so no one's checked in today, but yesterday at 10:10, somebody at 10 a.m., somebody checked in a Mustang, Haysham. I said the app says it's out of commission, but you can use NFC, but you had to use NFC. You couldn't, if you tried, you couldn't log in from the app. You had to use NFC. You also couldn't use a credit card. It just said cash only. It actually says on the credit card reader, cash only. What the fuck?
That
you tried swiping a $10 bill.
Those are the situations where, you know, if they need to just open those chargers up, they can't make people be stranded because not everyone has the NFC set up, and not every charger has the NFC working.
Oh my God, isn't that the truth? So this, you know, the fact of the matter is, what was so just mind blowing for me, because I moved to an Apple iPhone end of last year, is, you know, I just my double click and select Electrify and do it, and it was so amazing that I could start charging with NFC at those two at Soledad and Paso. It was like, oh my God, look, the system works. Because network connectivity can be really shitty out there in the middle of in the middle of Central Cal, you know, in the Central Valley. It's not a high density population area, and so, you know, I've had no data on my cell phone for a day and a half. Around here, there's some issue with T-Mobile. But of all those 10 chargers, which one was not working? The CHAdeMO. The CHAdeMO Connect, that one CHAdeMO, all on its own. And of course, we were charging there for about 25 minutes. I actually filled the battery while we picked up this dog. And as I did it, as we're talking, we're getting ready to leave, a Nissan Leaf turns up. And I'm like, well, they must be coming, you know, we're 50 miles in either direction. And the guy comes, you know, he pops his thing. I said, sorry, man, this one's actually dead. It's actually got the big red, you know, not working signs. Thankfully, there is a Caltrans maintenance station about half a mile down the street with a CHAdeMO connector on it. But you gotta say, what's Nissan's strategy?
The Aria.
I know that the Aria's got CCS, but are you telling me that no point are they going to offer a CCS upgrade for all these Leafs? Every single one of them is just going to be turned into a bloody shopping trolley.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, that's kind of, you know, you mentioned, you know, about before all the CCS sales picked up. That's kind of one of the biggest factors that pushed me into this car, at least for now. And I'm sure I'll be back to CCS, you know, someday. But in the like 15,000 miles of road trips I did in the ID4, I think once I ever showed up to a charger that was full. And, you know, there'd be many times there's like maybe 6 stalls or 4 stalls and 2 of them are broken. And I'd be there by myself anyway, so it wasn't ever a problem. Then when I picked up the Polestar and drove from Denver to San Diego, especially in San Diego, there was a lot of full chargers. Some would be broken, and then there's really a backup. And then when I did my trip to Disney, which I haven't uploaded yet, but that was in December, multiple times arriving at chargers that are full. And part of the problem is because of broken chargers, you know, creating a backup that wouldn't be there if all the chargers were working. And this is where the difference is kind of shines. And, you know, it's kind of that breaking point of more and more cars are being sold with this complimentary charging. So there's only going to be more and more people trying to take advantage of the free charging. And when Tesla ran into that in the problem back in the day of having full chargers, they just added more stalls, or they'd even bring out those portable chargers on the back of a semi that, you know, they can quick drop off a few extra stalls if they need to in the short term. And we need to see Electrify America be adding more, you know, stalls to the locations to accommodate that. I know for me, the 2 closest chargers around my house are notoriously broken and notoriously lines. And actually, Tom Malogany just did a video about this recently of he runs into that. All the chargers full around his house, and if he goes to leave his house to a charger that says it's not full, it'll be full by the time he gets there. And so there certainly is room for more stalls being installed and reliability improving as always. And it's going to really fall on the shoulders of EVgo and Electrify America to pick up the slack on this.
We're going to do this podcast in 2 parts today because something's just come up, which I have to deal with. But join us for part 2 of this podcast after this message. We don't have a sponsor, so it's just us again. There's nothing changed. Unfortunately, I had a critical thing come up in the background, so we had to jump. We were talking about the charging infrastructure. I talked about Kettleman, and yeah, you're going to have your own choices soon. But it's that's where we were, Joe. So I'm heading to San Diego in a week or so's time, the weekend of the 25th, just in case anyone's going to rob my house. The dog sitter going to be here. The dogs are here. Take them. Just do me take them. There's no valuables here. Hasn't been for years. So I'm going to take the e-tron down because that's what the wife wants me to do. And it's interesting, Joe, because and I might actually do a private video on my channel just about charging times and capacity and what it means in real life, because I'm going to do a trip to LA the week after that. I'm doing a stupid thing. I've been invited to do a show in a roast battle show in LA, and it's there's some prestige to this. But the only way I can make it work as a married man, a dad, and somebody who works for a living and yada, 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 is to shoot down on Friday while working. So I'm bringing an up-and-coming comic with me, also known as a bitch. I'm like, I need you to give my guy a guest spot. And they're like, well, why does he need a guest spot? I said, because I'm too old to drive back the same day. And I've got work to do, so I'm going to have him do the driving while I do some work on the way down. And then we're going to come back at we'll leave LA at 1 a.m. and get home at 6, 7 o'clock in the morning. Yay, stupid. It's a young man's game, but it's interesting, Joe. You look at the ID4 versus the e-tron, right? So at 17, the real world test, it's 200 miles on the e-tron, 70 miles an hour, and on the ID4, it's 234. It's not that big of a deal, but the distance between charges makes a huge difference. And the e-tron is a 3-charge situation, whereas the ID4 is only a 2-charge situation. And that's 2 charges because I need to arrive at the venue with 70% battery so that we can make a good start back. So it's basically driving as far as you can, charging to 80%, and then hauling gas. What's ridiculous about that, Joe, is normally you and I would be happy to just charge to 50%, but I can't do that because of the reliability of the network I'm using. And what's annoying is, I was on PlugShare the other day, is that there still isn't a huge amount. I'm going to do a screen share, but it's of 100 kilowatt plus.
It's pretty similar to what I went through going from my ID4 to the Polestar. Polestar is a little less efficient, but charges at that little higher speed. And so it ends up coming out that I think the Polestar was the faster vehicle to trip despite the inefficiencies. But I certainly also know what you're saying is, when I leave from here in Chicagoland heading west on I-80, the Polestar cannot make it all the way to Williamsburg, Iowa, or even the Iowa 80 truck stop. I have to stop somewhere, whereas the ID4 could.
And that's what's so annoying, Joe. Right now, you can't see this. I'm not doing my screen share right now, but I've gone into PlugShare. I've got CCS up, okay? So just CCS. And I go to 120 kilowatts minimum. Tell you what, I'll make it 70. because that gets rid of all the charge. That still gets rid of all those charge points, 62 and a halves. Okay. And there are, once you remove Electrify America from the equation, there is, I know there's one charger, ironically, at Kettleman. Of all the places, Kettleman has an EV range. I don't know if you're familiar with them.
I'm not.
You find them in hotel car parks. They're space range. It's $5 plus 50 cents a kilowatt. And they're dotted around. They're dotted around. You then get the free wire ones. The independent unit, 3-phase, with a battery, a 120 kilowatt battery inside them, so they can handle. They're for low volume. But there is, if EA is out, then there is no 100 kilowatt charging available between on I-5 between Los Banos and LA. You get some little, there's an EV Go at Valencia which says, and actually, what they might be, it says 100 to 350, and looking at them, they are actually big enough. There's an e-tron was pulling 84, but it's just you daren't. Right now, I daren't charge to 50, rip and run to 50% on that corridor, because a site could be out of commission. It might not have connectivity. I might get a working handle, but so this morning I dropped the kiddo off at school, and we've been having power cuts recently because of the windstorms coming through. The power's been a bit out, and so I'm charging the e-tron has to go up to 100%. We got taken up to the city and beyond later on. So I took my car, which was at 20%, to Alum Rock, which is where I usually shoot all those green glow videos. 4 sites, four chargers down there. Only one of them was working, and that was that there was an Ionic 5 plugged in at 31%, pulling 84 kilowatts. So that is that's not a cold battery. That's a shorted unit. It's just frustrating. I tell you, my hope is we've seen the app developments. I'm not saying it because it'll be great content, but if they really are, if Tesla's going to make that magic dock happen and have the CCS available at Hawthorne, I could really use that.
My hope is that Tesla doesn't put that handle on all of their units, that they kind of try to keep it to a few, just to at least try to keep a little bit of exclusivity for the people, to reward the people that do buy Teslas, that there'll be more plugs for them than plugs that anyone can show up and use. But I don't know. We'll definitely see on that. I mean, for reliability that I've run into in the past, I've been to my first ever trip I did, Fort Morgan, Colorado. One charger was working, and thankfully no one was there when I went through. When I was
the one at the Walmart, yeah, that's
in the middle of nowhere. There is nothing. Then there's the Green River. Everything was running, but it was all at like 30 kilowatts, except one unit was delivering about 100. And then of course there was the well-documented one was Grand Junction. No one even wants to go there to begin with because it's so far off the highway, and one handle of one unit was working.
Grand Junction that's the Walmart as well, right? You have to kind of drive.
But it's like 6 miles off the highway or something ridiculous. The one in between Glenwood Springs and Green River, and there's no way you can have, if the wind's the wrong direction, you're not getting to Green River without going to Grand Junction.
Well, you know what's amusing, my friend, since we both did that trip. So yeah, Fort Morgan is still there. I'm looking at it right now, and looking at the pictures. Oh my God, Joe, go and look at the pictures when you get a second for Fort Morgan. because somebody is true. There's the second picture. First of all, it tells us that there's still. This was August 15th of 2020. Someone has a lightning. I think it's a lightning, not a Rivian. You can't see the back because they're towing an Airstream, a frigging full-on Airstream. That's crazy. In fact, also, yeah. So, or a few days, in fact, a few days earlier, with some guy in a blue ID4 with JKEV on his thing. Some friggin' loser trying to advertise his YouTube channel, I guess.
Yeah. Key picture placement there.
But there is now a 260 kilowatt charge points. That's a weird number. In Sterling, a local energy company, Sterling Electric Colorado system.
So they had that used to be a 50 kilowatt unit, like a very old charge point that had poor reliability. So it looks like that energy company is definitely upgraded to a better unit, which works because, if the wind's blowing the wrong way, especially in winter, if you have a vehicle like, well, I don't know, like the Mini, I think the Mini would struggle to get from Ogallala to Fort Morgan without.
Excuse me, Ogallala. Could you pronounce the weird names correctly? It's important. That's where my wife's family's from. So just get
Ogallala
it right.
And Winnemucca.
I had my thing set to 200. It's yeah. Oh, and there is now a 50. There's now. Hold on. That looks like a free wire. Oh, it is, Joe. There is a free wire in Julesburg now.
Where's that? My filters are all thrown off because I have everything, including superchargers turned on.
So Julesburg is between. It's literally where 80 and 70 meet. Julesburg is literally like the corner of Colorado, Nebraska, and I don't know, whatever the hell else there is around there.
So it looks like some other companies took advantage of understanding that was a big stretch.
Well, it's not a company. It's a free free wire. So I mean that's it's got 160 kilowatt. So somebody's put the thing in. It's wow. The notes are fantastic. The unit contains local battery storage. Possibly it's a 160 model. Once depleted, charge speeds will drop to 24 kilowatts. Reported. Wow. Yeah. So it's on 3-phase. That's definitely the situation. And you look at some of the check-ins. It's had 120. It's been operational. Oh, someone says it stopped every 5 minutes. Something tells me that's when it runs out of juice. So 120 kilowatts running. So it's basically 5 hours, 5, 6, 8 hours to charge that bad boy up to full. Although, let's be honest, the only thing bigger than 100 kilowatts, real 100 kilowatts, is the Hummer. I don't think even the EQS runs more than
right.
110.
You could have a Lightning or a Rivian show up dead, and they would deplete it if they charged full, but you wouldn't, because why would you? But
I'm looking at the. There's some names in here that you and I would recognize. The people that comment all the time. It's. The Charger was snowed in. that is on brand for that place.
That's a thing that's actually a pretty common issue with superchargers is if they're installed perpendicular to the parking lot, snowplows tend to push up against them. So a lot of Western installations like Wyoming, Colorado, they put them parallel with the parking lot. So when a snowplow pushes up against them, it can't damage the charger. But around here, a lot of my chargers are leaning lazily backwards.
They've got to lean on them. Oh, that is amusing. That is amusing. We should just call this the bitching about charging channel. We really should change the name so that it more reflects. What's also interesting, I'm just looking at it right now, is big problems. As of last week, that 24 kilowatt charge point in Cheyenne has been out of order. So
the Harley one.
Yeah, and the other one's not open, and the Electrify America one in the Target's not open yet. I tell you, Joe, this is going to be. I think, you know what? I'm going to call it now, Joe. I'm going to call it now. The Family EV podcast rodeo. I'm going to call it the rodeo. Get together for all our fans, both of them, will take place at the Electrify America in Rock Springs, Wyoming, in the summer. Assuming it opens, we will. Because that really is going to be the kind of golden spike moment for the network. I mean, we already had one, which was obviously Green River. That was what actually allowed, brought the close the network up.
Green River, and then what's the one in northern Arizona? Kingman, Arizona.
Kingman. But Rock Springs is now the hole in the network, and it would be quite if Vernal's up and running. I imagine it would be an amazing drive from Rock Springs down to Vernal, to where that guy that we met with the Bolt.
And that's the drive that I did when I had gone to Jackson in the ID4.
Oh, you went through Dinosaur and then headed up. Oh, and you charged in Rock Springs.
I used the destination chargers at that. I don't know if it was a Best Western or what hotel that was. They were very nice.
Best Western. Very nice. The one that woke me up at the one where I got in at 2:00 in the morning, and somebody banged on the door at 8:00 in the morning to see if I was leaving that day. I was like, I was actually, I've never needed sleep more than ever. It's crazy just to look at all the chargers. Unfortunately, my plug share's just taken a header. Let's see if I zoom out and zoom back. Oh, there we go. That's done it. The amount of chargers that have grown between Salt Lake City and Jackson coming up. I'm just saying Jackson. I'm saying the whole of Yellowstone, really. The number of chargers that have been deployed out there is quite. Rocky Mountain Power put out a few. It's interesting. It's quite. I love the fact one of them's in a place called Battery Park.
That town you might see, Pocatello, that was one of the worst charging experiences I ever had. That was every EA station. 3 were down. There's 4 there. 3 were down. 1 charging at 34 kilowatts, and I had not enough battery to go anywhere. So I was there for a couple hours waiting for in line for people to go.
What's I mean, by the way, people, this is why Joe and I had this crazy plan of doing Highway 50 from Reno to Salt Lake in an ID4 back last summer. And we weren't going to do it in our own cars. We were only going to do it in one car together, because the idea of him to wait for the other person, 50 is not 50, it's 45. And the deep charge that would be required. I mean, there is something nuts. Which brings me to my point, Joe. There was a point to all this. So we charged up to 99% in Kettleman, and we're heading home. And that wind that we had on the way down is wind we still have. And we're doing 75. And so I did the mental math, which to you and I and to Kyle and anybody else that's been doing this for a long time does, where you work out what speed you should do to either get there and come in at 1% and be done, or how much faster can you drive so you hit that charger and only need a microcharge to make it. And we were right on the cusp. It was 199 miles of range on the car and 192 miles to the house. And I think you've been to the house, but we live up a hill. So the last bit's actually a little bit harder than the rest of it. I don't mean like up a hill. I mean up a hill. You know, I live in the mountains. I don't have neighbors. We have dogs. And I did the maths, and I was like, well, the way that her car charges, it would literally be a 5-minute charge, if that. She was pissed. She was pissed. The fact that the car couldn't drive exactly 200 miles. She was annoyed, and we had quite an argument about it. And I'm like, but it's time. It's quicker. We beat we beat the Audi route planner. The Audi route planner said to stop at, I don't know, wherever, Pinot Shell or Los Banos, and charge for 20 minutes. I drove at 75, consistent 75, and pulled into Gilroy at 5% and charged to 15% in 6 minutes, while talking to a lucid test driver. But again, what was really annoying is there's 10 chargers at Gilroy, and they're the older units. They're the older ABBs. I think they're ABBs. And 1, 2, 3, 4 of them weren't working on a Sunday night. It's just unacceptable. And yet there's 2 Tesla supercharger locations within a mile of there. I don't know. What do you think? Joe, here's the question, my friend, for you, Mr. Tesla driver. Clearly, Elon wants to get his hands on some of that federal infrastructure money. $7.5 billion available. Clearly, Elon wants to use some of that money to expand the superchargers and also commercialize it, because, I mean, you know, whether we like it or not, Tesla's in the energy business now. You know, between the mega packs, you know, they might be their own customer, but, you know, he's no cost of sale. You sign up for the app. You pay for the juice. I don't think Tesla, even with, you know, Tesla's done more work than anybody else to eliminate those time of use charges, you know, peak demand time charges through the use of energy management and packs. I don't think the federal government's going to say, they're going to want some kind of equality. They're not going to say, you know, how are you going to prioritize? How are you going to stop Tesla people using those charges? You know, how are you going to, does this mean that we need to move to a reservation system for chargers?
I guess, what do you mean? What would stop Tesla people from using what chargers?
If a Tesla, so you're saying you don't want, so, you know, you don't, there's 12 superchargers, there's 12 chargers. Right. You don't want them to all have a CCS adapter built into them, because that's not fair. So what's fair, and how do you make sure that the Tesla people prioritize the use of Tesla only?
Well, yeah, no, honestly, that's really the same scenario as how often do we go to an EA station and, you know, four chargers are open, but somebody's using the CCS plug of the Chatham unit, you know? That's kind of just, or how often is there an ID4 that's on a 350 unit, even though right next to it's a 150 unit that might be working fine. That's unfortunately just the lack of education. No different than when we saw the Tesla guy park at the EA station. I mean, and actually, not even to get you on that one, when I was driving from Vegas to San Diego in the Polestar, when I got to Baker, there was a Tesla that came over to me asking questions, because, you know, I think it was a rental and there was something wrong with the supercharger account on it. I don't know. The supercharger wasn't working when he was plugging it in. So there's something on the account side, right? So he was trying to say, well, how can I use these chargers? Well, you know, no one had educated him that you can't use the EA chargers without an adapter. So it's just kind of, there's just really a big lack of education in general across EVs. And that's kind of just the problem with, you know, Tesla just lets you check a box on your app and literally leave with a car without any tutorial. And, you know, Chevy or any other brand is quick to sell you a car without having you sit through an educational class on how to use that car, you know?
Yeah. No, these are interesting times. Look, we've talked a huge amount. We're probably already up to nearly an hour already. Joe, this week you went to the Chicago Auto Show.
I did.
And you put a video. I think you have put a video up, right?
Yep. Yeah, it's
Well, I'm
unfortunate
going
to
to put a
see
link to that in the show notes.
the demise
What
of
did you
auto
see?
shows in general. Because I mean, I've been going to the auto show for a decade, and it used to be BMW, Mercedes, Audi, Porsche. All the luxury brands were there, all the mainstream brands were there, right? And how far it's fallen from there. You still get. I mean, even Cadillac. The only Cadillac at the auto show was the Lyriq. There was no Escalade, XT6, any other CTS or whatever they call them now. Those are all missing. There's a bunch of all. There was a lot of Ford, Stellantis, General Motors, but even for GMC, they had a Hummer there. They didn't have a Hummer SUV. They didn't have a GMC Sierra EV. These are supposed to be the future vehicles, and they weren't. They were not there. So it's been rough seeing that a lot of brands are not prioritizing the auto show like they used to. The other thing I noticed this year that was different that I didn't like was when I was walking in Chevy. It used to be like there'd be a Trailblazer, and right next to the Trailblazer would be the Bolt, right? Because you'd say, okay, you want something subcompact? Here's your two choices, the electric one and the non-electric one. Now it was like all the electric vehicles were thrown off in a corner on a tile floor, and it was then you'd walk onto some nice carpet, and that's where the Corvette and the Trailblazer and all the ICE vehicles were. So they kind of took a different method of literally separating the electrics and pushing them off to the side from the rest of Chevy's vehicles. And you'll see that if you watch the walk around, I kind of point that out how it's not really the highlight that it was a few years ago. I mean, even when you go to GMC, they have the Hummer on the back wall, right? And then like the Buick Wildcat off in the corner, but the Sierra towing a boat right up in front, like the gas Sierra or diesel Sierra. So they've kind of pivoted on, what they're prioritizing. And I think it was recent news. GM just spent millions of dollars to develop a new V8 engine. They're kind of taking a pause. And we talked about a couple of weeks ago that they're pulled the plug on their 4th battery plant.
Well, no.
Potentially.
No. We'll come back to that in a minute because they are going to build that plant, but they're going to build it somewhere different, and we will come back to that in a minute because that touches my favorite thing, which is the stupidity of Republican politics. But anyway,
one thing actually off of speaking of battery plants that I have, you might know, so I kind of want to ask the question. So I have the LFP battery, right, known to be a little bit lower on power and range. So Tesla had to stuff a couple extra kilowatt hours into the car to get what I got to get my range out of it. But they claim that LFPs are supposed to charge faster than the nickel, cobalt, manganese. But there was, at least with this Model 3, there's no charging speed increase versus what was in the past. Is that just Tesla restricting it, do you think?
Yes, because they're holding it to 170. Well, there's two issues. So the chemistry can charge faster. However, the amount of battery is the limiting factor, and heat dissipation. So, smaller battery heats up quicker, and you can only cool it so much. It's a solid brick. The size of the battery is the limiting factor on charging. But also, and I saw it on someone else's video. It wasn't Maloney, it was somebody else's, where they showed the charging curve for the regular, dual motor, bigger Tesla battery versus the standard range. And the curve is exactly the same.
Right.
The only thing that's different is the peak charging amount, but the actual shape of the curve is the same.
Tesla does, and that's actually the same reason why I have a 7.6 kilowatt onboard AC charger versus 6 kilowatt onboard charger. So Tesla can just have the same numbers. You plug in, and you're going to be the same time to full, whichever one you use.
Oh, I never thought of it as that. Yeah, that's interesting.
because they don't want to undercut. That's why the long range rear wheel drive went away, because they realized that's what people want. So they don't.
Well, and that was the one. I mean, I had that, and that's the one I drove to Cheyenne that time, and I would say, yeah. Let's touch on Tesla news very quickly this week. Prices changed again.
Yep.
Moving on.
Oh, on to Tesla news. So I wonder about this. So I paid the $200 for full self-driving for a month, right? Going on a couple of road trips, figured, why not get it? I really just want it for the lane changes, which is what I'm getting. As soon as I put it on the screen rebooted, and I have lane changes now. And it will, and that's nice. And I can choose my, how aggressive I want it to be, yada, yada, lots of details.
Do you have it in Mad Max mode?
I do. I have toned it down at times because the Mad Max was a little aggressive on Super Bowl day when everyone else was not so safe driving. So, but I've played with it certainly a little bit. But what's interesting is I'm paying $200.
Do you have a comment to make on Rihanna? Because everybody else has a comment on Rihanna. Do you have one? Would you like to? What did you think of her?
Now that I've learned about the story of why she was dressed the way she's dressed and everyone else, pretty deep thought there by her. Pretty creative. Yeah.
I will say right now, and I've put some thought into this. One of the most lackluster phoned-in karaoke performances of a generation. Just
that's the Simon Cowell thing to say. So back to this Tesla thing, because it does bother me a little bit.
Yeah.
So I'm spending $200 a month for full self-driving. I'm in the queue just like everyone else was once upon a time in the queue. I don't have full self-driving from the day that I paid for it. And I don't have Summon or Auto Park or any of that stuff because I don't have radar, and Tesla Vision doesn't exist yet for those features. So I'm paying $200 a month for lane changes at this point with no idea when the full self-driving would be active on city streets. Well, or whatever, the beta.
That is, yeah. I can't fire up the music quickly enough, I'm afraid, in these situations. But I would say there is a sucker born every minute. Each time the second hand sweeps to the top, like dandelions, up they pop. Their ears so big, their eyes so wide. And though I feed 'em bona fide baloney, there's no truth in it. Like you can bet, I'll find a rube to buy my FSD. 'Cause sure as shooting, there's a sucker born every minute. I'm referring to the minute you were born. Who needs a soundboard, Joe? Here's the crazy thing. I only reason I remember that song is because I was sharing it with London this morning because she was asking about The Greatest Showman and how that story was created. But anyway, look, also in the news this week, we had Woz, co-founder of Apple, saying that, he's been ripped off by Elon Musk. He's bought multiple Teslas. He's always paid for FSD. He sold the cars. He's got nothing to show for it. Joe, you work in accounting and tax. Straight up, you knew that paying that $15,000. How much is FSD now?
Yeah, it would be $15,000. So I just paid the $200 for the month. I mean, I'm happy even at the $200, like for getting the lane changes on my trips. But it is, it's being branded as this is the features I'm going to get for the month that I'm paying, and I don't have them. And that's really the thing. That's where I think that's where I think at this point, for $100 a month, Tesla should say, oh, $100 a month, you can add the lane changes, right? Get enhanced autopilot, $100 a month, full self-driving, $200 a month. And I think you'd get a lot more people and probably make more money because a lot more people would be glad to check that self lane change box for the $100.
I mean, unfortunately, I can't tell you what lane changing is like on an ID4 because I don't have a 2023 ID4, which apparently has that functionality. But it is, I mean, at this point, why would you pay all that money for a software license, which you can't take with you? You buy another Tesla, you have to pay again. And how expensive if it's not full self-driving, and I've thought about this, I took that Tesla up to Seattle a couple of weeks ago. I really need to get that video finished. I was fine with autopilot.
Oh, it's great. Yeah.
Is it frustrating that you have to engage it again when you change lanes? Yeah. But it's not $200 of annoyance. Would I pay $200 for a month for road tripping? Maybe. But I also know me. I'd be like, well, I'm not paying it now. Let's see how I feel when I get out of here and get to somewhere. But once I'm used to this, I'm probably not going to. I don't know. Elon gets to run the business. Elon's got shareholders and stakeholders. He knows how many people are buying it, how many people are renting it, and he'll have to make some judgments. And I think the fact, at some point, resentment is a real thing. Like if I paid for it and I bought a Cybertruck and I can't take my license with me, that'd be frustrating. I'd be like, what is it? Because you're going to take that function away from the car when you sell it. Remember all those Tesla lease vehicles that you cannot hold on to your Tesla at the end of its lease. I wonder if that's going to change now that the values are plummeting. Now they might be like,
yeah,
we don't want to. How many vehicles a month do they have coming off lease? Ooh, I don't know. As long, Mr. Accountant, as long as the book to value is in the right direction, it doesn't make that much difference. I did see, apparently, it is right now cheaper to lease a Tesla than it is a Camry.
Yep.
Because of the values, and but then a Camry isn't a vehicle you lease. It's
yeah, I think it's $350 a month right now. Was the last price I saw. Right? Does that sound right?
Let's crash through the other news before we go anywhere.
And you can get a performance Model 3 white on black interior under 55 grand. So bang for the buck, 3.1 seconds to 60. It's one of the best power to value cars in the world.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Ford are going to build their plant.
Oh, yeah.
So the good people of Virginia decided that they were not going to provide tax breaks or land deals or anything like that to Ford because of the involvement of CATL, the people who make the battery in Joe's car, because this would be providing money to the Communist Party of China, according to the see, I'm not even calling him Republican. I'm going to call him whack job. I'm going to call him that he be affiliated with.
I'm actually interested. Why did they ever even look at Virginia over Michigan? I mean, if all the cars most of the trucks are being built in Michigan, why wouldn't you want the plant right down the road kind of scenario? I don't know.
It's only rail. It's only logistics. It's not that big of a deal. There's plenty of rail infrastructure between the two of them, so it's cheap to move stuff. Remember all the batteries in your Tesla Model 3? They're made on the other side of Reno. And the car's assembled in Fremont.
Not mine, but yes, for the normal Model 3.
No, well, no, and yours came all the way from. Your batteries came from. Your car was still made here,
yeah.
But the batteries came in through LA, and then they came on a train up here.
Yep. And so I watched Ford put a little 2-minute YouTube video out there, basically what their plan with the LFPs are, which makes sense. It's that copying what Tesla did, which is the smart way to do it. They're going to do their standard ranges with the LFPs, and their long ranges will stay with the NCMs.
Yep. It'll open in 26. They're going to employ 2,500 people with a plan to produce approximately 35 gigawatt hours of LFP batteries per year. That's enough for 400,000 vehicles.
CNBC did a little skit about this too, which seems pretty logical. They said it took Tesla about 5 years for that Reno plant to really get ramped up to like cranking out batteries. And logically, it probably will take similar amounts of time for all of these other factories that are. It's great to see all the factories being built, but there certainly is going to be a time that it'll take for the ramps to happen.
It will. One vehicle which is probably going to have an impact, and I really want to get your feedback. We have not spoken about this, by the way, dear listener. So this is we're going to get another Volkswagen electric vehicle in the second quarter of 2023. The ID7.
Oh, really? I didn't even know that.
What do you have you any thoughts on the frog-eyed Ioniq 6 ripoff? Who the hell wants to buy a sedan in this day and age?
Just remember it, because I assume they're building that in Germany and shipping it over, right?
Yep.
So let's just acknowledge that every place on a cargo ship that car is taking is one less ID Buzz we could have had over here. That's the disappointment.
Wow. I'm gonna text that to a friend of mine in a minute. Actually, I've just said that is hilarious. It is it's gonna the price is unknown. It doesn't matter what the price is because it's not going to be. It's made over there, which means unless you get it on a lease deal, it's not going to get the tax credit, which means it's going to be uncompetitive with a locally produced Tesla, unless VW wants to lose $15,000 per vehicle. I don't think they do. It's going to have a 15-inch screen as opposed to the current 12-inch screen in the ID4s. And other than that, it's an MEB vehicle. It does have a hatch. I will say it is a sedan with a hatch. It is Polestar-esque in that regard.
Okay, because the Ioniq 6, I just saw that has a traditional trunk, which was, I thought, obviously major design fault.
Oh, it does?
Yeah, major.
I haven't paid that much. I looked at the shape of that thing, and I just thought, no, literally, that was the shape of it.
You're talking Ioniq 6, right? Yeah. Yeah. I cannot. I mean, I get it. The Ioniq 5 has a competitive price because the Model Y is more expensive. So then you get tax credit, and they're pretty equal. But an Ioniq 6 is right on par price wise with the Model 3 long range. I don't see how I ever come home with an Ioniq 6 in that deal. I don't know how I come home with an Ioniq 6 over an Ioniq 5.
It's just ugly. Yeah. It's just, I get, sleek and efficient, but that is, yeah, don't know.
The slogan, Ioniq 6, making the BZ4X look good.
Burn. Joe's gearing up for Roast Battle EV edition, apparently. That is, that's brutal. They say it'll be able to drive up to 435 miles. So one would assume, just doing some simple math, that's going to be the near 100 kilowatt battery that we expect to see in the ID Buzz.
Yep, and then adjustments for EPA. It's somewhere in the 300s, probably competitive with the Ioniq 6.
We'll see, but
So is it basically an EQE, right? That's about the same size and battery.
No, it's because it's a saloon, and it's not an EQE because it's not that luxurious. Look, let me just say this right now. Saturday was a clusterfuck. We took the puppy to the vet. So you want to know what you use a frunk for in So we'd taken one of our boys down to have his boys checked, and the puppy to be checked as well. And we had to make the painful decision that the puppy, this was not. He was going to have a tough life, very tough life, and he just wasn't fully baked, unfortunately, as it were. His sister is delightful and ornery, but he wasn't. And it broke my heart, and there was tears. And but our boy had his boys checked, and everything was fine there. We lost his dad to cancer a couple of years ago, 14 years old. But and then we had to go and pick up this dog from some friend of ours in Kettleman. I'm like, well, I've got 2 crates in the car because that's how we roll. But I'm like, can't put a dead puppy. I wrapped him up because I loved him so much. I kept him in his little wrap because I didn't want. It sounds weird. I didn't want him to get cold because he hated being cold. I'm like, well, just euthanize him, but I still don't want him to be cold. And so I had him all wrapped up, and I'm like, oh fuck, I got to put bad words there. I got to put him in the. I can't keep a dead puppy in that crate with a live dog. That's just not a good situation. So that's what the frunk was for, people, because it was under 50 degrees, and so he would stay cold, as it were. And then when we got home late at night, I wasn't burying a puppy at night because zombie puppies are real. So he stayed overnight in the frunk.
I didn't know you had a frunk. What is what size is that about?
It's not a usable size. It's not you can't put a bag in it. It's got charging cables.
Kind of like this, so kind of like the Ionix.
Yeah, you get the charging cables. In ours are the charging cables, snow socks, and a jack. I have an actual jack in there because it's a box. You can actually close the lid and then the trunk, so nothing will smack the metal and it's up. So I have a proper jack in there, still a windy jack, but a proper jack, not the piece of crap that we sell. The piece of crap that's in the back. I don't want to be messing around with a 6,000 pound vehicle and a little hand crank thing. This is a proper jack. It's got a proper thing. So that's in there. That weighs a couple of pounds. And a puppy. But anyway, I digress. What were we going to close this out on? It wasn't dead puppies. I've forgotten now, my friend. One last piece of interesting news. Apple has pre-announced the fact that the next edition of CarPlay will have better integration with vehicles.
Right. They showed this on their tip over the summer when they had their, basically their developers conference or whatever. And that was showing that if cars are enabled properly, Apple could actually take over the center display as well as the infotainment.
Yep. And they're doing that. And so right now, one of the vehicles which they're doing it with is you get a special flavor of CarPlay if you have a Ford Lightning, definitely a Lightning, possibly a Mustang. I'm not sure.
Lightning would make sense. And they've been a really big gauge cluster. The Mach-E has a very tiny, useless gauge cluster.
Yeah, right now it was on the Mach-E, and you can, if it's connected to a compatible vehicle, you can say, and it'll give you EV routing. I have to say, and I'm curious about this. Did you do a premium thing with a better route planner?
I've turned it on, turned it off at times. You mean like right now? Is it active? It's not active right now.
Well, no, not now that you've gone Tesla. I have kept I have a premium account with them, and last year they enabled a thing called Smart Car, and so this is a service it's free. Well, it's not Smart Car is the free bit, but you have to pay for its usage in a better route planner. And Smart Car is kind of like a broker for different cars, different manufacturers, to share critical information like EV battery, and location and all those things. And bottom line is, if Google Maps, if Google and Apple and Waze, I guess, were to actually just sign a bloody deal with Smart Car, you could actually have this switched on tomorrow for everybody. Privacy concerns notwithstanding. But anyway, that's my rant. I need to do a deep dive on a better route planner, and that's why you and I were talking about B-Gates on a text chat last night. But
it's very interesting. I've done a little bit of trip planning. I'm going to St. Louis this weekend So that'll be the first little, like, do a couple charges, see how this seems to road trip. And then I have the big trip starting next week. Wednesday is when I'll leave towards heading towards Vegas. And when I punched it into a better route planner, it's saying 14 charges, 5 hours, 40 minutes of charging to get from here to Vegas. And I don't think there's weather information transmitting in there properly because it's not premium. But on the Tesla app, it's actually saying like 7 hours of charging, which I definitely know that I can beat. So it'll be interesting to see.
Well, yeah, that is so. Yeah, I mean, Chicago to St. Louis, that's a what, one charge? Two? No, that's just gonna be a one charge job.
Yeah, Bloomington each way. Yeah.
You have charging in where you're staying?
No, I'm at my friend's condo, so I will have to top up somewhere around St. Louis. I haven't, but I'll once he gives me, he'll text me his address, and I'll see what's around and just drop the car there for, one night, something, figure it out.
Yeah. No, it's no. Well, look, there'll be more from Joe on the road and from myself. Looks like we're both going to be on the road for a little while. But if you have been, thanks for listening.
And take care until next time.
There you go. I'll edit out that really weird pause there. But I might just leave it in because this is funny at this point.
Well, I thought there was going to be more than just an abrupt ending like that.
Well, I mean, Joe, seriously, I can't.
It's an hour and a half.
I know how long
is that what happens?
It's an hour and 15 minutes. We're up to an hour. By the time I've edited these two pieces together, it's going to be an hour and 15 minutes. Look, if our listeners not got something else to do, I'm worried. I mean, I'm worried. They shouldn't be left to listen to us for an hour and a half. Their carer's going to have to come in and check.
Well, they're definitely into a deep sleep right now. That's for sure.
Absolutely. See you down the road, Joe.
See ya.